Hello and welcome to another Starcraft 2 commentary video with Jabbar. This will be a PvZ video. Here I am at the top of Metalopolis. My opponent is Zealot down at the bottom. This is a diamond replay, and this is going to be my own execution of Naniwa's PvZ build from MLG Providence. And of course he had a bunch of builds from that tournament, a lot based on different scouting that he did, but this in particular I think is what he really was trying to do every game, whether he had to vary his play or not. And you can see this in his series against Dongray Gu. He pretty much did this exact build, as near as I can tell. I'm doing it right. Obviously not as well as Naniwa, but I'm doing my best to get the concepts right. He did this exact build against DRG twice in a row, and it just rolled through him. So currently in the metagame, I guess you could say, of PvZ, the strategical landscape, what we have most predominantly is Forge Expand from the Protoss, Fast 3 base from Zerg, Roach Ling defense from Zerg against any pressure, and as soon as Zerg feels safe, Zerg makes mutalisks and harasses Protoss to death while expanding everywhere. Protoss has a very tough time defeating this. So this build is actually sort of designed to crush that strategy. Zerg cannot do that strategy, in my opinion, with this build. I mean, yeah, I'm going to try and get this drone, but I'm not going to be totally successful. Always good to do little things like that. So I am Forge Expanding. I'm going to walk through every step of this build. There's a couple of steps. And unfortunately the building placements are a little weird. I think I could have put this pylon a little farther forward. So I'm just going to make a cannon here as part of my wall in. So this is not really ideal building placement, but don't focus on that. If you want to learn building placement, look for another video from someplace else. Unfortunately, this is not it. Also, I just want to look at the forge real quick. I've never noticed this little spinny thing before. This is really cool. Alright. So, we've got all standard stuff: cannon, pylon, gateway. Going to throw down 2 gases pretty quickly here. And Zerg is expanding. So Zerg has no real scouting information of my base yet. He only knows my location. But, at 4 minutes it's not really going to happen. So he sees the Forge Expand. I think a good play from the Zerg right now would be some kind of all-in because of how vulnerable these front buildings are, but luckily for me he won't do that this game, so we're just not going to focus on that. Again, building placement on my part, not good, but we're not looking at building placement, we're just looking at the build. And if you can imagine I had good building placement and the Zerg didn't want to all in, then he would just do this anyway. So fast 3rd base from Zerg, very standard. This is not some crazy thing that Zerg's doing that I have to kill. It's just sort of standard play. So always keep a probe out here to check for niduses. And note, I'm spreading out my probes. You want about 2 probes on the map, and you want to hide them in pretty decent locations for pylons. And I'm just going to keep these guys here and hope they don't get spotted, pretty much. So I start +1 warpgate, and I make 2 zealots. This is again something Naniwa did pretty consistently. You make 2 zealots and you send them out for scouting and a little pressure. Now Zerg is going to barely miss these 2 probes. Oof. Just out of vision range. Note how early I sent those probes. If I sent them a little later, like if I sent them now, he would be able to tell. He would, intercept them with his Zerglings. So at this point, as soon as I have the money for it, I'm going to start making, after these 2 zealots, I'm only making sentries out of my gateway, and I'm going to make 3 additional warp gates to a total of 4. And I don't quite have the money, there we go. So I'm up to 4 warp gates right now. In order to make, for example, 6 warp gates, I would have to cut probes and just sort of go all in. And, I mean, not entirely, but, you know, you have to cut some probes to get that out. This, actually, don't have to cut probes to make 4 gates. Just barely. So I'm still patrolling with this guy just in case he wants to nidus me. At this point, it's pretty unlikely. And now, warp gate is going to finish soon, so I make pylons. More specifically, I make a pylon up here. I want to pressure this base. This is really my goal. So there's a scout. I want to verify he has his base, and if he didn't, I would probably just start adding cannons in a mad panic and hope that it was okay. And here come the zealots, but he's got roaches out in time. Look at the worker count. We're a little bit ahead because he had to make these roaches dance with us. But now we're even with his next round of drones. He's going to make spores because a Stargate follow-up is very common, but I think given his scouting, he probably shouldn't have made those. It just doesn't make that much sense. Okay, now, this pylon becomes very important. As soon as warp gate finishes, we've got 4 gates. We're going to use zealots, nothing else, just zealots, and just pressure this 3rd base. We're just going to drill the 3rd base. Zealots aren't that bad against roaches. On creep, they can be. And for example, right here, I'm not really going to do anything, so I'm just going to get them out of there. But I'm just warping in more zealots. At home, I'm going to make a robo and get +1 armor. +1 attack is already finished. A lot of Zergs will try to defend this kind of pressure with pure Zergling while teching up to Spire or Infester. And this type of thing with these +1 zealots can do massive amounts of damage. So at this point, we look at the worker count. Zerg is a bit ahead, about 60 on 3 days, so he is ahead, but he really can't make workers anymore because we're just going to keep pressuring him with these zealots. Robo is done. We immediately make the robotics bay. And we're warping in sentries whenever we can. So I'm in here. I'm going to kill some workers. Try and focus down the hatch if I can. Do whatever you can. Just pressure this base. If he takes drones off mining, that's fantastic. We really want that. Now, while this robotics bay, the robotics bay is making, we're going to construct a warp prism. I think I was a bit late on this warp prism. I know Naniwa can actually sneak a warp prism and an immortal out in time, and I try to do this, but by the time the robotics bay is finished, I actually should just cancel this and make the Colossus. So, still pressuring. Look at all the roaches he has to make. He's really not had time to make any more drones. And we have almost even economies at this point. It's quite good. Here comes the warp prism. So here comes the benefit of this pylon near the 3rd base, and especially on this map in particular. We can pressure with the zealots on this side, and pressure with zealots with the warp prism on this side. So Colossus and range are in construction now. +1 armor is done. We've got a healthy number of sentries. And just waiting on some warp-ins. And look at this. Zerg is constructing his spire. Zerg thinks the pressure is finished. He thinks, okay, Protoss is teching. He's going to try and take a 3rd. I'll have the mutas out, and I'll win. The spire indicates Zerg feels rather safe from pressure at this point. He also is, in fact, taking a 4th, which is really greedy, and we're just not going to let that happen at all. And there's more zealot warp-ins. Keep pressuring. Always keep pressuring with the zealots. There's no reason not to. We're going to be burning our excess minerals on those. So, more Colossus coming in. Our timing to attack, at least for Naniwa, was about when range finished. And he is actually about, I would say, a minute ahead he would have range. He'd be attacking it by now. But, you know, I'm not quite as good as Naniwa, so my build is a little delayed for now. Either way, nothing's here. I'm just going to focus down the hatchery. Getting this hatchery is huge, very good, and our incomes are about even. Zerg is making his mutalisks. If this were a standard game and I was just going to expand, Zerg is not out of that game. Mutalisk can bring him back into it easily. However, with the 2 Colossus and a 3rd on the way, we are going to go attack. And our attacking lane, if I can just mention this, we had this pylon up here to drill the 3rd base, and what we're going to do is push. Our starting location for our attack is this pylon, obviously. We're going to push from here, follow the mini-map. We're going to push down here through the 3rd, down here through the natural, and up to the main. It's just sort of a big curvy line that protects our pylon. It's hard for him to sneak past and kill the pylon or to counterattack. Of course, he can counterattack all the way up here, but that's rather slow, and it's just not very efficient for him. So we have a big path of attack that goes through all of his expansion locations. And now we can see a pretty scary army right now. The Zerg is trying to rely on roaches for his defense. But we have these Colossus, sentries, and stalkers. Roaches will not be enough against that. And I'm going to make that pylon a little bit closer. Always sort of creep forward with your pylons. He's trying to retake this base. We will not let him. And 2 Colossus is scary. 3 Colossus is a nightmare for Zerg. And we are also up to a lot of gateways. Naniwa had about 8 with constant reinforcements, but we can, you know, we can make a few more if we're not totally perfect with our macro. And we're just going to roll in here and kill everything. Notice he has his mutalisks out, but they cannot do enough. We have quite a lot of stalkers here. Mutalisks don't do very well against Colossus. They don't have very good range compared to corruptors. They don't kill them that fast. And Guardian Shield against mutas is very strong. At this point, if, for example, Zerg was able to barely hold off our attack, if he's going mutalisks, he almost certainly can't. He'll just die like this, which is what happened to Dongrigu and several other Zergs in MLG Providence. But if he, for example, was going for a strong Roach Hydra, he saved this base, he had good macro, and he got corruptors out, we would probably not be able to survive. We would need to, you know, do some good force fields and retreat. But we can almost definitely kill the 3rd base with this push, and then we take our own 3rd. So this is kind of an all-in, but you know, this sort of timing is sort of important right now against Zergs who are going mutalisks. It's pretty tough for them to survive anything like this. If we do any push that doesn't have Colossus, Zerg has a good chance of holding it off with the roaches and lings. But the Colossus just totally changes the whole dynamic of this part of the game. Zerg can't survive until mutalisk with just roaches and lings, unless he has amazing macro and micro, and like gets a huge surround and flank and picks off all the sentries and whatever else. So yeah, that's going to be it. Thank you for watching. Definitely try this out. We are also, I guess I should have been mentioning it, but we had this warp prism over here doing some harassment the whole time. Always good to spread him thin a little bit. And if you want to, Hero does this sort of thing, Liquid Hero. He does the 4 gateways, the robo opener, for the warp prism and the zealot harassment at the 3rd, just like we opened with. And then he transitions into DT drops and High Templar, and goes into Charge Lights or Blink Immortal. So that's something else you can do if you want to play a bit more of a macro game, but that is a bit weaker against mass mutalisk in the end game, of course. So if you want to hit a good timing, this is how you do it. Thanks for watching.